All right, a couple of you guys have emailed me asking questions about how to go from moles to moles or from moles to mass. So here we have an equation: aluminum plus hydrogen sulfate yields aluminum sulfate plus hydrogen. Remember, hydrogen with a little 2 beside it means that it's a diatomic molecule. So the first thing we're going to do, as we do any kind of stoichiometry problem, is to do our element inventory. Aluminum, we have sulfate. I have SO4 and SO4 on both sides. That means both of these are the same polyatomic ion, meaning that I don't need to separate them. So we can just keep that as a single unit in our inventory. Remember, we do hydrogen last. So in the same order on my product side, I'm going to write aluminum and sulfate and hydrogen again. So on my reactant side, I have 1 aluminum. Now, this trips a lot of you guys up. Don't let this little 4 confuse you. We have 3 SO4s. Remember, the 4 is part of the body of what sulfate is. So we have 3 sulfates on the reactant side, 1 aluminum, 2 hydrogens. On the product side, we have 2 aluminums, 1 sulfate, and 2 hydrogens. All right, so first thing we're going to balance is our aluminum. We need to change this aluminum on the reactant side to 2. So that means I need to put a coefficient of 2. Remember, we don't put subscripts, just coefficients every time. Coefficient of 2, so now our aluminums are balanced. Now we need to address the sulfate. We have 3 on the reactant side, 1 on the product side. So that means we need to change this to 3 and add a coefficient of 3, not in front of the sulfate, because now it's part of a compound. We need to put it in front of the aluminum. So we no longer have 2 aluminums on the reactant side. We have 3 times 2, which is 6. So we can easily change this to 6 by adding a 6 as a coefficient in front of aluminum on the reactant side. All right, so let's do a check. We have 6 aluminums on both sides. We have 3 sulfates on both sides. This 3 applies not only to the aluminum, but the sulfate. But we have how many hydrogens? 2. So that's already balanced. Now that we have it balanced, let's ask a question. How many moles of hydrogen sulfate would be needed for 3 moles of hydrogen? And we're looking at the diatomic molecule over here. So you need to add the 2. So first thing we always do is write down what we know. We're being given 3 moles of hydrogen. So we're going to write 3 moles hydrogen. Remember, we're going to do the same process every time. Put that over 1. We need to get rid of moles of hydrogen. So moles of hydrogen on the bottom here. We're going from moles of hydrogen to what? Moles of hydrogen sulfate. So we're going to put moles of hydrogen sulfate up top. Now we need to go back to our original equation. That's why we had to balance it first and look at our molar ratio of hydrogen to hydrogen sulfate. We have 1. Remember, if you don't see a coefficient, the implied number is 1. 1 number of hydrogen for 1 mole of hydrogen sulfate. Moles cancels out. Now we're multiplying across the top and across the bottom to get 3 moles. Don't forget to write your units, and it's not just 3 moles. It's 3 moles of what? Hydrogen sulfate. Now, let's do a problem where we're going from moles to mass. Let's say I have 12.2 moles of aluminum, and I need to know the mass of aluminum sulfate I need. Same thing as before. Start off with what we're being given. We have 12.2 moles of aluminum. That over 1. Now we need to, before we go to mass, we need to figure out the molar ratio between aluminum and aluminum sulfate. So before we jump to grams, we need to go to our molar ratio. So again, we need to get rid of moles of aluminum. And we're comparing aluminum this time to aluminum sulfate. All right, so now we need to look at our molar ratio. We have a coefficient of 6 for aluminum. And what's our coefficient for aluminum sulfate? 3. So now we're just going to multiply or cross out the part that needs to be canceled out. Now we just need to multiply 12.2 times 3. I don't have a calculator, so I think that is going to be 36.6. All of that over 6. And my unit is going to be moles of aluminum sulfate. I'll let you guys do the math. That's the simple part. So I'm going to attach another video to supplement this. If you have any other questions, please email.